Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I love introducing you to people who are committed to working on their own development and to helping others become the best version of themselves. That's also a key focus of my company, Grow Strong Leaders. We publish software tools and books for improving the way people connect with each other at work. You can find us at growstrongleaders.com. Today, I am really looking forward to the conversation I'm going to be having with my guest, Tom Lawrence. Tom, welcome to my show.
Hi, Meredith. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have you here. And I first want to recognize and thank Deb Crow, who's the one that introduced us. So yeah. I appreciate that because you have a unique background compared to my other guests. So let me introduce you to my audience and then we'll jump in. Tom is unique because he's worked in engineering for his entire career. His undergraduate degree is in mechanical engineering and his master's degree is in maintenance engineering. He had his first leadership role as a project manager in 2009, and he's worked primarily in the rail industry. And he's led a variety of types of engineering teams. And as a result of all of his various experiences in different levels of leadership, Tom is now on a mission to help aspiring leaders as well as current leaders enhance their leadership skills so they can bring out the best in the people on their teams. A man after my own heart, Tom. And as part of his mission, Tom has written 2 books, and we'll be talking about some of the key points from those books. The first one is Manager to Leader, How to Become a Highly Effective Leader. And the other one, his newest one, is A Limitless Mindset, How a Highly Effective Leader Thinks. So Tom, let's start out by having you talk a little bit about your journey from engineer as a worker, let's say, to leader. And I'd love for you to include that 3-month project where this transition all began, because that's such an interesting story.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started as an engineer when I was 16 years old as an apprentice mechanical engineer. And that was in the automotive industry. It wasn't in the rail industry. And I did that for about 4 years as an apprentice. And then as soon as my apprenticeship finished, the company that I worked for in Liverpool in the UK, I got made redundant from. So they had to cut a lot of the workers. And because I was new, it was like a sort of last in, first out type of thing. Mm-hmm. So following that, I had a couple of jobs, engineering type jobs. One was in the heating industry for about 9 months, and one was in a sort of a production job for a few months. And then I got a job as a technical officer in the rail industry. And within about 6 months, they said to me, we'd like to put you through your degree and we'll fund it for you for your engineering degree to sort of enhance from what you did in your apprenticeship. And that was basically the start of my learning about leadership, learning about personal development, learning about how to influence people. That was the sort of start of my journey in 2006. So once I finished my degree in 2009, I got my first leadership role in project manager. I wasn't leading a team, but what I was doing, I was indirectly leading the production engineers who were maintaining the trains. So I had to learn how to influence people through not actually being in my charge, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I was reading like lots of leadership books on John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, all the big leadership gurus out there. Even like Max Story, who's I think he's a John Maxwell team member. He did blue collar leadership, so I learned a lot from him because I was in the blue collar industry. And and then that was it really. I sort of just carried on, and I moved from Liverpool in the UK up to Scotland to work for the Scottish Railways, and I was a production manager there. So it was the first time I had my own team members, and it was on a shift basis as well. So I was doing day shifts and night shifts, and I've got to admit, the Scottish sort of attitude and the Scottish ways of working was a lot more old school, if you know what I mean, like very much male dominated and very kind of more dictatorship than leadership. And I found it really tough to sort of, to lead in the way I wanted to. And I sort of lost my confidence a little bit with leading the team. So I did that for about 4 years, and then I moved down to London, where I live now. And since 2015 in London, I've worked in Siemens, the company, in their rail sector. So I managed an engineering performance team for 2 years, and then I moved to another railway company where I was deputy professional head of engineering. So I had like my own department and my own managers under me who had their own team. So that was like my first senior leadership role. And I did that for about 2 years. And now I'm working for a consultancy. And it was in 2019 that I joined that consultancy. And I'm working on a number of projects where I'm a senior project manager and I lead a number of teams. So it's not really my own department, but it is a number of teams that I'm leading. And it was since I got the consultancy role that I thought, well, why is it I'm on this journey? Like, how am I where I am now? And the only way I could sort of figure that out is if I wrote it down. So I just started writing it down for myself, and I couldn't believe how quickly the writing process was going for me, and how everything was just pouring out of me. It was just like, it's like, wow, this is really easy. And I just thought to myself, well, why don't I put it in a book and see if I can help people? Like, try and structure it in a book, or maybe like blog posts or something, or articles that can help others who've been on a similar journey to me. But maybe they can realize how to lead and influence people a lot earlier in their journey. So that's when I sort of worked out my why, which was to sort of help aspiring and current leaders turn into highly effective leaders, because we all need future leaders. We're always looking for future leaders, but we're also looking to help and improve our current leaders. So that was where the journey came from, as far as the highlyeffectiveleader.com came. And then just turning my articles or notes into books, really. And as I say, I've published my first book, which is Manager to Leader.
Yes.
And I published that on the 31st of January 2021. And my second book, which is A Limitless Mindset, which I published on the 31st of January 2022. So I've got a process going where I'm going to be self-publishing a number of books over the next few years, and then who knows after that. So it's just an ongoing thing.
Yes. Well, Tom, I really enjoyed both of your books because you blended them, with stories about your own experiences, both mistakes you made as well as successes you had, and explaining why. And one of the things that to me is so interesting as a theme that you have, that you've consciously chosen, is this phrase, highly effective leader. It's in the subtitle of both your books. It's your website domain name. And so talk a little bit about why that phrase is so important to you.
Well, I read the book. This was about 2007. The seven habits of highly effective people by Stephen R. Covey. And after reading lots of leadership books and watching lots of leadership videos, listening to lots of leadership podcasts, audios, everything, I thought, well, I need to sort of create what's my vision for a leader. What does a leader look like to me? And to me, a leader is somebody who creates an environment that focuses on people. People is their number one priority, and all the greatest leadership coaches and greatest leadership authors in the world say similar things. But what is it that my leader, like me, what is it that I want to do to help people? And I want to help people to learn to lead themselves, to learn to lead other people, grow themselves, and increase their influence for the good of others. Leadership is about others, but it starts with you. So at the end of the day, I need to help these leaders, first of all, lead themselves, but they also need to be able to lead others, for them to be able to lead others, for them to be able to lead others. And then I just sort of, well, how am I going to package that? What's that going to look like? What's it going to sound like? And I just thought of highly effective leader, and I couldn't get it out of my head. It was just kept rolling around in my head, and I thought, well, why don't I just call it highlyeffectiveleader.com, the website, or the business. So that's what I did. And then, so when everyone asks me, like, what is a highly effective leader? Well, a highly effective leader is a leader who focuses on people, that creates an environment that focuses on people, which helps them to learn to lead, grow, and increase their influence for the good of others. And that's exactly what a highly effective leader is.
And that just so resonates with me, because it's what my podcast is all about. Really focusing on leaders who've been committed to their own development, which you clearly have, as well as developing the people on their teams or the people they work with. And so one of the things that I thought was so interesting, oftentimes we hear about people in the engineering area or any of these more scientific left brain kinds of fields where they struggle with the people side, because that's not how their brain automatically works. I'm curious about how where did it become clear to you that the people side was equally as important or even more important than the technical side?
Well, when I got that role in Scotland as the engineering and production manager, my line manager was very tough, very old school. He was a massive micromanager. He didn't care how I felt. He didn't care how the team felt, as long as we got the job done. That was all it was about. He never ever once asked me how I was. Never once asked me how my family was, how I was feeling from the move from Liverpool to Scotland on my own. It was always, are the trains out? Are the trains out the door? Are the trains fixed? Do we have the right availability for the passengers? And it was like, well, surely he must, understand that his role is not about trains. His role is about people. My role is about people as well. Even though I'm middle management, he's senior management. It's the engineers on the shop floor. Their role is about trains. So they're the ones who should be focused on that. We're supposed to be focused on them, on the people, so that they can focus on the trains. Whereas if you're focusing on the trains from that level, the people are going to suffer. And then that was when it sort of really hit me, thinking, well, this guy doesn't even care how I feel. He doesn't care that he's on my back 24/7 almost, and making me feel really, really bad, and that I don't want to be there, and I don't really want to get out of bed anymore, like, to go to this job. And that was how it was feeling. And that's when it really hit me that, we need to change this, especially, as you say, in an engineering industry where everything's focused on products, fixing things, processes, procedures, growth of the business, money. It's never ever focused on people. Whereas if you focus on the people, all those things that I've just mentioned will take care of themselves. They'll become a byproduct of you focusing on people. Because if a person wants to be at the job, they're going to give their best. If they don't, then they're not. So that was when it really hit home with me, is when I had that kind of person on my back, saying he was my leader when he wasn't. He was my micromanager, and that was the real thing that got to me, that made me think. And I still can't get it out of my head now.
Well, you had an experience, a story that you shared that contrasted two different managers that you had. And so talk about what that first one was like and the impact that it had. I don't know if it was the same individual in that scenario, but you had a manager and then you got a new manager and it was a world of difference. And I would love for you to share a little bit about the differences between those two styles.
Well, the manager I was talking about, he was the engineering director in Liverpool of the Mersey. I used to work for Merseyrail. That's the name of the Liverpool Railway Company, and his name was Kevin, and he's the one who said to me, "I want to put you through university because I can see that you've done your apprenticeship, you've got the qualifications for it, and we get on well. I can see you've got great potential. I'd love for you to use that potential." And he said that within like 2 weeks of him being in the role, because I'd been in this role for about say 6 months, and then they changed engineering director, and then ever since then, while I worked for that company and he was there, he just felt it was just so inspirational. He was always talking about like the good things that we did. It was never about like yesterday I asked you to do this, but this didn't happen. This didn't happen. It was always like, yesterday when you did that piece of work, thanks for that. Well done. He'd always say thank you to you. He'd always walk around and speak to the engineers and ask them how they were. Like, even though he was like director level, he would speak to you eye to eye. And his leadership style was just like, they called it like leadership by walking around, like just asking how you were. And he was one of the most inspiring people I've ever worked with. And he's another reason why I started writing, because people need to know that this leadership style really does work. And that's what inspired me to take the job in Scotland. And when I did take the job in Scotland, he was so supportive. He really wanted me to do it because he knew it would be a step up from where I was then and where I was in that company. There was the opportunities weren't there. So the only way I could get the opportunity to have my own team was to move somewhere else or work somewhere else. And that's why he was so supportive, because he knew that it would enhance my career. And then when I took that role, the style of leadership I had from basically the guy I've just spoken about, he micromanaged me, and he didn't care about how I felt. He didn't care about how other people felt. All he wanted was for the trains to be out the door so that his boss, his engineering director, could say well done to him. And that was all that he cared about. It was eventually he just cared about himself, and he wasn't bothered about the impact that it had on me. I was having sleepless nights over it. I was thinking, have I made a mistake moving from Liverpool, leaving my family, leaving my friends to move to Scotland on my own? Is this a mistake? Should I move back? And it was really a really tough time. And he just didn't have any clue or that basically it was him who was delivering this on me, and it just felt awful. And
well, what you're describing reminds me of a fear-based culture, because you were clearly driven by fear of making a mistake, of having him jump on your case if there was something that wasn't exactly right, versus the other one, Kevin, who really focused on what you did well.
Exactly.
And I love that example of contrast. And in fact, you made this interesting distinction between working for a leader and working with a leader. And so talk a little bit about how that plays out in a real scenario.
Well, when you know that you're working with someone, even though you know that they're your leader and they're like, say, two positions above you in the hierarchy or the organizational chart, it still feels like they're on the same level as you. Like, you can talk to them, you can talk to the leader about anything, and you know that they'll listen, and that that when they give their advice or their opinion on the matter, it will help. It'll be helpful. Whereas when you feel like you work for somebody, you do feel in fear. You don't feel like, oh, I don't know whether I should tell him that I'm not feeling very well today, because he might get angry. I'll just carry on. I'll send him an email. I'll do, or just anything to avoid speaking to him, because that he's going to react in a way that's not going to be pleasant. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you know you're working for him. Whereas when you're working with him, it's like working alongside you. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
when you work for someone, it's like they're above you, and
Yeah.
that's the difference.
Mm-hmm. You know, the word that's coming to mind as I'm listening to you is approachable. You know, do
Mm,
you feel like you can approach this person and they'll respond in a way that's helpful for
yeah.
you as opposed to pushing you away? And, you know, this ties in with another point that you made that I thought was a really good one. You were saying that one way leaders can influence people without relying on their authority is to
Mm,
work on their character. So
yeah.
what do you mean when you talk about character-based leadership? What does that look like?
Well, when you work on your character, you sort of it's the opposite to working on your competency. Like leadership is 80% character and 20% competency. That's what I believe.
Hmm.
And when you working on your character, it's really working on yourself and who you are, not what you are. It's nothing to do with your leadership position. It's nothing to do with your job title. It's nothing to do with your job description. It's nothing to do with your career trajectory or anything like that. It's who you are. What do you value? Who are you from here? And do you care for people? Because as we've mentioned earlier, leadership is about others. It's about people,
Mm-hmm.
and I just put it starts with you, and that's where the character comes in. It's like if you keep developing your character and knowing who you are, and you being in a leadership position, um, it just sort of enhances that a little bit. But you don't have to be in a leadership position, because if you can lead without being in a leadership position, that goes to show how good of a leader you are,
Mm-hmm.
and how good of an influence you have, and in positive influence you have over your peers or your family members or your friends or anything. So it's basically who you are as your character. Your competency is like leadership skills and the working on leadership principles, but your character is basically who you are on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And and do people trust you?
Mm-hmm.
Because trust is the foundation of leadership. So
Absolutely.
so if your character is um, untrustworthy, then that's when you need to work on it and develop it.
Mm-hmm. What would you recommend for someone who is, you know, wanting to exhibit leadership, whether they have the title or not? What are some ways that you've seen to be very effective, either things you've adopted and done, or you've observed managers you've worked with to build that trust? What kinds of things would a good leader do to build trust?
Well, to build trust, you need to build a relationship. So if you're working within a team, then or if you were leading a team, the best way to do it is working one to one with people. And the way I did it when I moved to London, I had a team of 4 people, and I basically just started from the very beginning, just having one-to-ones with all 4 of them over a period of time. And what I did was listen. Like I'd ask a question, like a very open question, like like say for example, like what have you done so far in your role, or like how did you get to where you are, or what's your background, or who are you? Like very open questions where they can't say
Mhm.
yes or no. And then my role is to just be quiet, listen, make notes, and learn about them. And the more you sort of learn about another person, and they can learn about you as well, the more a relationship builds. Like when you make friends with somebody, you
Mm,
meet them every so often, and the relationship builds and builds and builds. Or if you meet a partner, you don't meet once and then you fall in love. You meet every so often, and the relationship builds. It's exactly the same in the workplace, and you've got to sort of treat it like you are meeting a friend or meeting or a family member or something. It's just building relationships, just like any other
mm,
way.
mhm,
It's just that you can't. I mean, people say don't take it work isn't a personal thing. It very much is a personal thing. You're there 8 hours, 12 hours a day, most of your life
mhm,
with other people. So the only way you can get along with these people is by building a relationship and building trust with them. And
mhm,
once you build trust with them, you can influence them and lead them, and they can influence you and lead you, because trust is a two-way street. So they
Mhm.
can't, you got to be able to trust them as much as they can trust you.
Mhm.
Otherwise it won't work.
You know, Tom, as you're talking, this idea of investing, seeing it as an investment of
Mm,
time and
yeah.
energy in the relationships, because that's really required. You can't develop the kind of trust you're talking about, just by passing somebody in the hallway
Mm,
or focusing exclusively on what needs to get done.
yeah,
Because I think the theme that's running across everything you're saying is, people have to feel you care
exactly.
about them, that you have a genuine interest in who they are and how they're doing.
Yeah.
And one of the other interesting distinctions that you made is between secure leaders and insecure leaders.
Mm.
So, building on what we've talked about so far, what do you see as something positive that secure leaders do compared to what those that are less secure?
Well, secure leaders are very much confident in themselves and they're confident in who they are. And when you have a secure leader or a secure, highly effective leader, what their main goal is to keep learning, but their other main goal is to keep sharing, like sharing their knowledge, because leaders don't have to know everything. There's going to be people within the team who know more than you do, even if you're the leader. But it's your responsibility as the leader to ensure that to help your team members develop. And the way to do that is by sharing your knowledge with them. So if you want a specific person in your team to become a leader in the future, then it's your responsibility to um, share your leadership knowledge and your leadership skill, or leadership stories, for example, like I have in my books, by
Mhm.
talking to them and helping them to develop their leadership skills, basically teaching them in a way. Um, or if you're in the engineering industry like me, and you're a leader of an engineering team, then it's your responsibility to ensure that your team members are upskilled to the right level to carry out the job. And if
Mhm.
that means you help them do that yourself, then do. If it means you send them on a training course or something like that, then do that. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure that they keep developing. And an insecure leader basically is like that line manager I talked about in Scotland. He's very much in himself, just thinking about himself, doesn't care about what happens to the team or how they're feeling, or just as long as they get the job done, that's all I care about. And if the job doesn't happen, he blames them.
Mhm.
It's a highly toxic and blame culture. Basically,
Mhm.
that's how an insecure leader is basically goes about his work. He's very
Mhm.
and he does the thing about it as well is the insecure leaders don't know that they're doing it, and that's the worst thing about it is they don't know that the impact that they're having on people, and by doing your micromanagement and not sharing your knowledge and keeping things to yourself, because when they don't share their knowledge, or the reason that they don't share their knowledge is because they think if I try and develop this guy into become a leader, he might take over my job, or
Mm.
he might take over someone else's job. I can't have that. And that's the mindset of an insecure leader.
Mhm.
Whereas actually, if I develop him to be good enough to leave and get an even better job than he's doing now, but I treat him well enough that he doesn't want to leave, that's the role of a secure leader. And that's how a secure leader operates.
Mhm. I really like those differences that you just described. And I thought of another related piece when you were talking about a secure leader, sharing stories, sharing successes. It seems to me the other thing related to that is a secure leader is willing to talk about mistakes that they've
Mm,
made in the past, own
yeah,
up to it if they make a mistake in real time,
yeah,
whereas an insecure leader feels threatened about that and would be more likely to, as you said, blame others, but
mm,
also withhold sharing any mistakes they've made in the past for fear of losing the respect of
yeah,
people, not realizing that if they owned up to it, that people would respect them more.
Yeah,
instead of
exactly.
less. And the
Yeah.
other thing that is related is awareness. The
Mm,
insecure leader is simply not aware, it sounds like, of the impact that
mm,
their behavior has on others. And if, in that, I don't know if irony is the right word, but the unfortunate aspect is if they lead in that way where people don't feel that it's safe to bring up issues related to that person's leadership style,
mm.
then that leader is never going to get the truth that would help them make improvements to get production and performance at the highest possible level.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the worst thing about it is, as you mentioned, is that awareness of knowing the impact you're having, but also when you mention the word respect as well, insecure leaders, they demand respect. They're the ones who where so the people they'll respect the position, the job position, but they won't respect the person.
Mhm,
Whereas with a secure leader, they earn respect by
mhm,
behaving in the way that they do, by sharing their knowledge, helping others, listening to people. I mean, as you said before, like a secure leader cares. I mean, when
mhm,
you listen to your people, your people feel heard, and when they feel heard, they feel cared for.
mhm.
And when they feel cared for, that's when trust builds again, and
Yeah.
that's when respect builds, and that's how they earn respect by investing that time to listen and help. And that's what
Mhm.
leadership's all about: is helping others, serving others, isn't it?
Yes.
And for an insecure leader, it's the exact opposite.
Mm,
I think the insecure leader always feels in fear as well of
yeah.
losing their job or losing the respect or losing their authority. Like
Mhm.
people might think I'm weak. When it's not, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in your second book, you have the title Limitless Mindset. Talk a
Mm.
little bit about what you mean by that for a leader. How can they be that?
Well, a limitless mindset is you either have a limited mindset or a limitless mindset. So a limitless mindset is basically how a highly effective leader thinks, and the way they think is they put their people first. It's always about the people first, and um, sharing their knowledge. So like your limitless mindset is, I'm a constant learner. Leaders are learners. You've heard that phrase before.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
there's no limit to what you cannot learn. When a highly effective leader talks to someone or listens to somebody, their number one priority is to listen, is to learn from them, and to whether it's to learn about the job that they've just done, to learn about the problem that they want to solve, to learn about something that's happening in their family, something that's happening in their life. It's always to learn, and that's what a limitless mindset is all about. And that's how a highly effective leader thinks: is I want to keep learning. And for a limited mindset, you have a ceiling. Like you can only like people with limited mindsets think that education stops when they finish university or they finish
mhm,
school or something or whatever it is, so that they don't need to learn anymore. Or if they get to management level or director level, that's it. Now they've reached the pinnacle of their career. They don't need to learn anymore. So
mm,
their ceiling is now hit.
mhm,
Whereas education for me is a lifelong journey. I will never stop being educated, and that's you. And when I say being educated, you educate yourself. People give you materials and information and resources, but you've got to take it all in yourself. So you educate
mhm,
yourself. Like it's your school teacher or your university lecturer, they give you all the information, but you've got to take it all in. And
mhm.
that's basically what a limitless mindset is all about: is how much you can absorb and how much you can learn and put what you learn into good use.
It's like continual growth. You
Mm,
don't ever see the end of it. And one of the things I also love in both of your books is your emphasis on really helping other people develop. And
yeah.
one of the things that you talk about is helping them learn to solve problems for
Mm,
themselves. So, what are some of the approaches you've taken for my listeners who, whether they're parents,
mm,
or have a leadership role? Or any position really, you have opportunities where you can help people solve their own problems. So you don't feel like you have to be the one providing the answer every time. So give us some examples of things that you've done to help other people learn how to solve their problems before they come to you.
Well, when I first took over that role in 2015, I was working for Siemens, and there was a guy on the team who's called Phil, and he was a brilliant engineer. But when he had a problem, he had this sort of view that I had to solve it for him because I was in the performance manager role. I was the boss. I was the leader. I had to solve all the problems. And I was thinking, well, at the time I was like, well, no, Phil's got this wrong. So I sat down with him and I said, well, come on then, explain to me your problem. And to talk about it in layman's terms, it was like a technical problem on a train, and it was basically to how to fix the engine on the train. It's not really called an engine, but it's called a traction motor. But it's like an engine on a train. It's what makes the train go. And he was asking me about a certain component on this traction motor. Do I replace it or do I fix it? And I was like, well, what do you think? He's like, well, you tell me. I said, no. I said, come on, Phil, what do you think? And he was like, well, if we replace it, then that'll obviously be in more material and it'll cost money. But if I fix it, that'll cost money because it'll take my time. I was like, okay, so what do you think then? What do you think the answer should be? And he was like, well, I'm not sure. I said, well, just keep thinking, or take this away and come back to me. So he did. He took it away and he come back to me and he wrote out he'd done a big spreadsheet and a sort of like notes of like how he got to his answer. And I was like, okay, so what's your decision? And he's like, well, no, it's your decision. I said, no, Phil, it's your decision. No, you're the one who's done all this work. You make the decision. I said, whatever decision you make, I will go with. What's your decision? And his decision said, okay, I'll maintain it. I'll fix it. Go on then, do it. And he's like, really? Like, yeah, no problem. It's no problem. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll learn from it. So at the end of Phil, this is your baby. This is your project. So he went away, did it, and lo and behold, it worked. So the approach that I had was ask questions, open questions. Like, someone comes to you with a problem. First question, what's the problem? And then they'll tell you what the problem is. And if they say to you, what do you think? Say, well, hang on a minute. No, you tell me what you think first. It's you've got to keep digging deeper into there and help them think deeper and deep. And if it means that they go away to work on something or they can do it straight there, there and then it doesn't really matter. As long as the decision that they make at the end of the discussion, they feel confident in, they feel passionate about, and they feel that it will work, then I'm happy to go with it.
That's such a great example. And what I love about it is, and it just hit me, we talk about getting people to buy into doing whatever the work is that needs to be done. What you did there, and what a really effective leader, highly effective leader would do, is as a result of you having that person go through the process, they've bought into the solution. And so they are very committed to making it work.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you had given the answer, well, I think you ought to do this, then if he was questioning that and he hadn't gone through all that analysis, he's not confident that that is the right solution. And he's more half-hearted about his commitment to make it work. And so if it doesn't work, it's like, well, see, I didn't think it really would. Whereas here, he's laid out all the rationale why that's the right approach. And so by golly, he's going to do whatever he needs to have it work. I just love that. It's such a great story. Thank you.
Yeah,
and
no
Tom,
problem.
This has just been a wonderful conversation. I just realized we are at time. You've shared so many great principles, I would call them, as well as behaviors. And I just want to commend you for your appreciation for what leadership required and making that commitment yourself early on in your career. And you've been pursuing it all these years, and you're living what it is you're writing about and you're recommending. So you're a wonderful role model for this.
Thank you.
I just love what you're doing. And anyone who is aspiring to lead or in a position of leadership where maybe you've been struggling, I think you would really benefit from both of Tom's books, which is the Manager to Leader and a Limitless Mindset. Tom, tell people, please, how they can connect with you and get copies of your books and just learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah, well, you can go to my website. It's highlyeffectiveleader.com. So I've got articles on there. I've got YouTube videos. My YouTube channel is called Leadership and Growth, where I talk about leadership, personal growth, and influence. All my articles are based on leadership, personal growth, and influence. And you could get my books on Amazon, and you can also get them on Barnes and Noble as well. If you can't get on Amazon, they're digital copies on Barnes and Noble, but you can get paperback and Kindle copies on Amazon. I'm also going to be, if you don't mind me mentioning this, I'm also partnering with a company called Edlago. They're an education. It's called Edlago is the sort of logo, and the name of the company is called Education Foresight. So I've written a new ebook with them. It's called Your Future Leader, which we're launching very soon.
Okay.
It's about like how to identify future leaders within your organization. So have a look out for that one. That'll be on LinkedIn. As I say, I'm on LinkedIn. I post twice a day. My name's Tom Lawrence on there, so just look me up.
Yes, and I want to encourage people to connect with you and follow because you have some great posts and you get some fabulous engagement around them.
Yeah.
So sometimes the comments are, very enlightening too as they build on what you've posted. So
Yeah. No, as I say, it's the momentum's building on LinkedIn, and I love posting on there. I love talking to people on there, and if people who are listening want to connect with me, then just add me to your network, and let's talk.
that's great. Yes, be sure to mention that you heard Tom on this podcast. And Tom, be sure to send me the information about your new ebook because we can get that put on your show notes page when the interview goes live. Thank you again, Tom, for being my guest today. You've shared such great insights from your own experiences as someone who had both poor and excellent leadership examples. And I love the way you are applying all of those principles and behaviors in your own role as a leader. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free facilitator guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.